I was reminded this morning, the last time we did one of these was in 2013. And I got up here and we had all of our speakers and we made really powerful points and I was feeling so proud of myself. And we got to the end of the press conference and one of the media hands went up and I said, yes, I'll answer your question now. And she said, who are you, by the way? And it was then that I realized I never introduced myself. So we'll start with that today. I'm Jeff Bauer. I'm the Director of Public Policy at an organization called the Family Partnership. We are the home to the Pride program, which has been working with sexually exploited women and girls for over 35 years. We have an awesome Pride staff in the back. Yay! They are truly some of my heroes. So thanks for being here. I also want to recognize our president and CEO, Molly Greenman, who is here. Molly, do you want to wave? Hi. As well as a lot of our board members and others who are here. Also, there's an awesome group of Humphrey School students who I'm working with this semester in the back, so thank you all for being here too. And one more shout out to the folks from Duluth, my hometown, who came down today. Thank you so much. All right, so, and of course the legislators, some of whom you'll hear from, our co-authors on this bill. We appreciate you all so much for taking this on. So nearly 4 years ago, it's hard to believe nearly 4 years ago, we passed our safe harbor law in Minnesota. And that was the law that said that never again would children who are sexually exploited be treated as criminals in our state. Those children would be connected to the support and services that they need to heal and reclaim their lives. And it's been a long 4 years since then. We've done a lot. So the first 18 months after that law was passed, we met with folks from all over the state. And we put together what I believe is the best model, the most comprehensive model in the entire country. In January 2013, we rolled that model out. It was called the Safe Harbor No Wrong Door model in Minnesota. And we proceeded to try to fund that model. That model cost $13.3 million to fund. That is a number that has not changed in the 3 years. It's always good to have a number that doesn't change with the legislature. You know, we just keep our eye on the ball. But we have accomplished a lot in the last 2 legislative sessions. And I want to recognize our former chief author on the bill, Representative Susan Allen, who did so much for us. And you'll hear from our current chief authors, so I won't embarrass you yet. So, we managed to fund 21 shelter beds around the state of Minnesota. We managed to fund a competitive comprehensive services grant fund that funded 13 projects around the state of Minnesota for trafficked children. We've managed to train, I'm going to get this hopefully right, Representative Pinto, nearly 1,000 law enforcement professionals around the state to investigate child sex trafficking cases and to identify victims. And we've put in place 8 regional navigators around the state to connect trafficked children with the resources that they need. So I'd say we've accomplished a lot over the last 4 years. That being said, we have a long way to go. You know, I really do believe that we're in the midst of an epidemic, and that epidemic is the sexual exploitation of our children. And when you're in the midst of an epidemic, there's no time to rest, and we have more to do. So we're back this legislative session. We currently, in the fiscal 16-17 budget, have $5 million of that $13.3 million. So for those of you who are right-brained like me, we are about 38% funded currently. So we're back this year to ask for the remaining $8.3 million. And what that will go for, it's $4 more million for shelter and housing around the state for children who have been trafficked. It's $2 million more to fund the comprehensive services that children need around the state. It's $800,000 to fund youth outreach workers around the state, and I'm really excited about this piece because we're working together with our friends working on the Homeless Youth Act for this piece. So these outreach workers would really be trained to work with vulnerable kids, whether they're homeless, whether they're being trafficked, whether they're runaways. And last but not least, an additional $1.5 million to continue training a broader range of people around the state who would come into contact with trafficked children and to develop really what the model protocols are for dealing with those kids. So I just want to close with one thing, and it's, you know, this is a really personal issue to me, and I knew Representative Miller and I would get along well because he takes this really personally too. But, you know, for me, we passed a law 4 years ago, and that was really important. But I take it as this. I take it as that we made a promise 4 years ago. And we promised all these kids, the ones who are being trafficked up to the oil fields in North Dakota, the ones that we're finding in every community across this state, we promised them not only that we wouldn't treat them like criminals, we promised them that we would protect them, that we would connect them to what they need to get on with their lives. And I really feel like, I feel it in my bones that this is the legislative session where we truly do step forward and we fully fulfill that promise. So on that, I want to hand it over to our chief author in the House this year, Representative Tim Miller. We've been getting to know each other. I'm telling you, this guy holds this issue near and dear to his heart, and we're so lucky to have him, and he's got some comments for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff, very much. And you did teach me one thing today. My name is Tim Miller, and I am state representative from District 17A, which is Swift, Chippewa, almost all of Renville County, and 4 townships in Candioi County. And I truly am honored and blessed to be part of this, so I appreciate Jeff and the Family Partnership and other people who brought this to my attention. It's quickly grown in my heart. I have a brief statement I want to share, and then any questions I'll stand for after the other people have spoken. I'd like to thank Jeff Bauer and the Family Partnership for their continued dedication and leadership on the issue of human trafficking of underage girls and our state's response to the Safe Harbor Law of 2011. I want to thank the Minnesota Human Trafficking Task Force for their continued work. Thank you everyone in law enforcement, the courts, and community organizations such as Heartland Girls Ranch and the Women's Foundation of Minnesota who have fought the good fight for these girls. My wife was a victim of sexual abuse as a child. And to think that there are people who profit from this is unconscionable to me. To know that there are men who pay to assault these women, these girls, is despicable. I have 3 daughters whom I love, and I certainly would not want this to happen to them. I'm thankful that Minnesota has taken this problem seriously by passing the Safe Harbor Law in 2011, but there's much more work to be accomplished. The legislation I have authored will expand funding of programs such as the Heartland Girls Ranch in Benson, along with better support for law enforcement and continued education for workers in our social services. I don't think any of us can fully understand the amount of pain these children are facing, but we can combat the problem directly. Through this bill, I'm asking the state of Minnesota to join us in these efforts. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Representative Miller. Next, I want to bring up Representative Matt Dean, who is the chairman of the House Health and Human Services Finance Committee. Also someone who I walked into his office before the session and put this before him, and he answered in about 2 seconds flat that this is something that he cared deeply about and wanted to do something about as well. So Representative Dean, come on up.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff, and thanks to everybody who has worked so very hard on this issue for many years. I came to really know about this issue through the Safe Harbor Law, and like many legislators and people across the state of Minnesota, I said, how can this possibly be happening here in our state of Minnesota? And how could it possibly be happening not just in the Twin Cities, but in small town Minnesota in particular? It just shocked me, the numbers and how pervasive a problem this is. So it also really heartens me to see law enforcement, the legislature, Republicans, Democrats coming together for Minnesota at its very best to step in and to help people who are in need. I think this is how we need to judge ourselves as a state, by how we help those who can't help themselves, and particularly victims of crime, and especially children. That's going to be an emphasis that you'll see and hear from this year. We are so very, very happy that Representative Miller has picked this bill up. We wish him great success in moving this forward. We've got great help, not just from bipartisan support, but also support federally on this important issue. And it's one that we want to make sure that we do right by the citizens of the state of Minnesota. We're very excited about this effort this year, and we are really stand ready to help. Thank you all for everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Representative Dean. Next we, I probably couldn't ever say enough about our next speaker, Senate President Sandy Pappas. She really has been from day one, and probably from before day one, the champion on this issue in the state legislature. We wouldn't be anywhere without you, Senator Pappas. And we were so pleased that you agreed to chief author again this year. So come on up.
Obviously, it takes a whole large coalition to make successful legislation, so I certainly couldn't do it with all the people who have been involved over the years, and the task force, and the Women's Foundation, and the Family Partnership, and everyone that's been involved. And but it is really a very pervasive and insidious problem. And let me just tell you a story that I might have told before, but I don't know if everyone has heard it. Is that a few years ago, I just read an article in the newspaper that the police were called for a situation at a hotel downtown St. Paul that's connected to my condo by Skyway. And a young girl from Iowa, 17-year-old girl from Iowa, had been held captive and trafficked out of that hotel for a week. She finally got a moment away from her captors and called the police and said, please, pleaded with them, come and help me, they're going to kill me. Now, that girl was rescued, but what happened to her? Where was she taken? We had no place, we had no safe place for her to go except for juvenile home. And that means she's treated like a criminal. So it really showed the need for this safe harbor law, where these girls, no wrong door, you're a victim, we're going to give you the services that you need, we're going to respond to your situation, to your problems, whatever they are, so that you don't have to continue in this lifestyle. So that's what the Safe Harbor is doing, and what it potentially will be doing, and I'm very proud to be authoring this recent Safe Harbor bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I'm remembering who's coming up next. Give me a second. Got it. Okay, good. Next I want to bring up Representative Miller has been teaching me all about his district since we got to know each other. But there is one part of his district that I already knew a lot about, which is that it includes Heartland Girls Ranch. And Heartland Girls Ranch is an amazing organization that works not only with trafficked girls, but girls from a variety of circumstances. It's a beautiful place. You should all visit it. And I want to bring its executive director up here, Cece Perlo, to say a few words. Cece.
Thank you, Doug. I'd like to start by just really sending and letting Representative Tim Miller know how much we appreciate his efforts and his work to support this bill, and also to Senator Pappas for being the chief author of this bill. It has been a real journey for us at Heartland Girls Ranch. The funding that we have received has allowed us to open a 8-bed facility for girls who have been trafficked. These girls come to us in various difficult situations, but we're so grateful that we have the funds to help us work with them. At Heartland, the funds that we have received have allowed us to open this facility. It is currently a temporary house, and as we raise funds to expand beds and also to cover the services, we are looking and excited about the potential of additional funds being available. There's a great need to provide trauma-informed, comprehensive services and also long-term care, which is really needed to see healing happen in these young ladies. And boys, it's girls and boys. And to recover from that trauma, there's a lot of work that has to be done so that they can begin a new life. Without continued funding, it would be very difficult to be able to serve the great need that is in our state. And so we are just very hopeful that this is going to be happening soon for us. We at Heartland Girls Ranch are very proud to be part of this successful work that so many people have partnered with, that the policymakers and our statewide partners have been courageous enough to be able to tackle this issue, to develop and then to implement this safe harbor law. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Cece. So before we get to our last speaker, I just want to recognize someone else in the room. County Attorney John Choi, Ramsey County Attorney, is here. Another part of this whole equation is putting the bad guys away for a long time. And John, I think, was it the longest sentence in the country? John got one of the longest sentences in the country against a trafficker recently, 40 years, I believe. So good job on that. Representative Pinto, with his prosecutor hat on, I believe, had a lot to do with that as well. So thank you both. So last but not least, I want to bring Terry Williams up here. She's the Vice President of the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. They need no introduction, but I will remind you, 5 years ago now, they launched their Minnesota Girls Are Not For Sale campaign, which is a 5-year, $5 million campaign. I do believe you all really put this issue on the map in Minnesota. You opened people's eyes. You made it inescapable for people. In addition to funding so much of the good work that has happened in the meantime, including the advocacy effort here at the Capitol. So Terry, come on up. And give Terry a second.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Good afternoon. Because I'm going to follow the protocol that Jeff set out, my name is Terry Williams, and I'm the Vice President at the Women's Foundation of Minnesota. And I am thrilled to be here today on behalf of the Women's Foundation to really celebrate the partnership that's come together, the bipartisan partnership. I want to thank Representative Miller, right there, Senator Pappas. I want to thank all of the elected officials who have come together from both sides of the aisle to do this incredibly important work. And of course, I have to shout out and thank every one of the advocates that are in this room, because everyone in this room are really the folks that are making all of this happen. In 2011, as Jeff said, the Women's Foundation of Minnesota launched the Minnesota Girls Are Not For Sale campaign. And you all know that that was the campaign to end child sex trafficking in our state. We wanted to see victims that were treated as victims rather than criminals. We wanted to ensure that there was safe and secure housing in place, and we really wanted to make sure that there were services in place. And I have to tell you that last month we did our last grant round for this year, and I can't say who, but I can tell you that it's working, because we had 2 law enforcement agencies from greater Minnesota, the first time we've ever seen that, as a result of the 1,000 officers that your office trained, Dave, that came in for grants, and they all were working with our regional navigators and with our providers, including CC and Heartland Girls Ranch. So it's working, the model is really working, and we're starting to see that kind of impact. From the very beginning, the work that we've done in Minnesota to end child sex trafficking has really taken a coalition of all of us coming together, and that's included philanthropies, it's included the nonprofit sector, it's included the business community, and obviously it's included government and our elected officials. So what that means is that we've been able to successfully pass Safe Harbor, we've been able to successfully pass the Safe Harbor implementation No Wrong Door, and to get it partially funded. It means that that's what we're going to do again to push this legislation forward today, to get it fully funded. The Women's Foundation has also been extremely proud of our public partner, that's a really hard thing to say, our public partnership with the state of Minnesota, and that we really have been working and funding side by side with the state to make sure that Safe Harbor No Wrong Door implementation is successful. So we know that together we're going to work to get this fully funded, right? We're going to push this thing over the goal line. The Women's Foundation continues to be a partner. We're continuing to work with all of you to get it done. That's our commitment to you. That's our commitment to our advocates, to our elected officials, and most importantly, to all of the children who we continue to hear are growing exponentially, as Jeff said. We are in the midst of an epidemic, so we are working together to push this one over. So I want to thank all of you. I want to thank Jeff for pulling this together, and all of our wonderful elected officials who come together. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And with that, I would say thank you all once again, and we can stand for any questions that you may have. All right. Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.